Cypher, I finished unpacking the last of my equipment. Between your ship's onboard systems and my custom apparatus, you'll soon have the finest in-flight laboratory in the sector.
You'll make us the envy of the fleet.
Then I'll refrain from publicizing it. Officially, of course, I'm in semi-retirement, monitoring background radiation somewhere in the Zetan wastes. Unofficially, I'm very much looking forward to traveling with you.
Understood, Doctor. I've never been to the Zetan wastes, and we have never met.
An excellent start. I expect this should prove very interesting. Should you need anything from me, you only have to ask. Although if you want my genetic code rewritten, let me know before we leave the ship.
I thought you could become a rack ghoul whenever you wanted.
It's somewhat more complicated and time-consuming. Well, nothing to be concerned with, but rarely an option in the field. Good day. Cypher, join us. Vector and I were just discussing Moff Lett-Shara.
We never met her, of course.
Quite fortunate, that. But Vector did know her husband, a fine Dejarik player and a scribe of the Ilfmar Gambit.
We apparently share the Doctor's taste in theatre.
By all means, continue.
I wouldn't want to take your time, but Master Vector, we should talk again.
Of course, Doctor.
Your crew members are delightful people. For instance, did you know Mistress Kaleo is fluent in Kalish profanities? A rare and admirable skill. I wonder how you manage them. Leadership is such a delicate thing.
You sound like you've thought about this.
I confess it had crossed my mind. A dead or alienated colleague is a resource lost, and in our business, it's a small step from being disliked to being blacklisted.
Alienate enough people and you find yourself running unauthorized missions on a dead planet.
Quite. I could tell you stories. But I'm afraid I have to attend to my data analysis program. Another time, Cypher. My good friend, allow an old man some sentiment and join me for a reminiscence. Today is the 13th anniversary of the death of SWtOR, one of the finest agents I've ever worked with.
You have my sympathies, Doctor.
No need for that. It has been 30 years. But I like to pay my respects. SWtOR was one of the old guard from before the war. He cultivated allies on the fringes. By the time he received his Mandalorian brands, he'd also become verbally abusive in private, but he never cracked on the job. Always had a smile.
Were you partners?
I was technical advisor on several of his assignments, and we shared a taste in Mirialan cuisine. Eventually the odds caught up with him, and a Hapani royal assassin punctured his lungs. Inevitable, really. Are you aware how few ciphers survive past year 5?
The odds aren't good for any of us.
Quite so. I admire the line you walk between obedience and ingenuity. Unfortunately, your methods breed enemies. Be careful not to end up without recourse.
There's some truth there, I'll admit. We'll see what happens.
Friendly advice from one who knows. I've made it through a very long career by choosing my partners wisely. I've outlasted them all, and I intend to keep doing so. Cypher, I had the most delightful conversation with Master Vector. Did you... I'm getting a feed on my earpiece. One moment. I apologize. That's the 3rd time this week one of my security alarms has gone off.
I take it these alarms don't particularly worry you?
I monitor all my safe houses as a matter of course. I have a few dozen around the galaxy. A precaution, really. I haven't needed them in years. Usually when an alarm goes off, it means a child has come exploring, or a rat has slipped through the ventilation shafts.
You're not going to double-check?
Hardly worth the bother. I really should dismantle the safe houses altogether. But old habits die hard. Besides, I hold out hope that I'll need to go to ground someday in one last exciting adventure.
Remind me not to underestimate you, Doctor. If we ever need a sanctuary...
You'll have whatever humble aid I can provide.
Doctor, you wanted to talk.
Yes, and I'm terribly sorry to take your time, but I have a small request. To be frank, it's a bit of an embarrassment.
You have my undivided attention.
I told you before about my safe houses, how my intruder alarms have been going off. I attributed it to local happenstance. I may have been mistaken. My safe house on Balmora exploded.
Any idea who among your enemies is responsible?
I could theorize regarding who did this and why, but truthfully, all I know is someone bypassed Imperial security to get inside. I'll need to see the safe house in person. I'll return as soon as I can.
You could be walking into a trap. Stay alert, Doctor.
And you? Well, I'm afraid the news is mixed. My safe house did indeed burn to the ground, along with 3 would-be assassins who were attempting to wire it with explosives. Apparently, my security triggered their bombs prematurely.
I assume you're trying to ID these people.
I did acquire genetic samples of the intruders. I'll be running traces shortly. One was a human male. The others, uncertain. Regardless, they used Imperial equipment and codes to get inside. Someone in the Empire wants me dead.
Supposing you're right, what do you intend to do about it?
The list of people with grudges against me is a long and varied one. It will be some time before I narrow it down. But I take comfort in the fact that I'm once again viewed as a threat. My days in retirement are over.
What can I do for you, Doctor?
Forgive me, but as your sole medical officer, I have to point out that your eating habits have been less than satisfactory lately. Now, I'll take my share of the blame. I've been preoccupied making calls, catching up on what I've missed in the intelligence community. Still, the fact that people are trying to kill me does not excuse my neglect of your health.
I appreciate your concern, but you've done a fine job.
Says the child to the unstrict parent. But regarding my search, I do have some small amount of news. I've identified one of the assassins as an operative for Colonel Langor, a man with ties to the Imperial Science Bureau. The Bureau is also the likely origin of the other dead men whose genetic structure had been mutated. Weaponized humans.
What do you mean, weaponized humans? What's the Science Bureau doing?
Military research is the Bureau's purpose. Making humans stronger, faster, is one approach. Which reminds me, I'd like your permission to run some tests on Master Vector. I'm rather curious about a joiner's physiology, and Vector is keen to learn more about himself.
If it won't cause harm, I don't have any objections.
Wonderful. I'll let him know the good news. And of course, I'll keep you apprised.